Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, the youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry, whether it be youth group or youth camp. Whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Paulhamus. I'm joined by my fellow host and good friend,
Kyle Gray. Josh, it is good to be back.
It's like getting back on a bike.
It's crazy because we had talked about, do we just jump right back in and not act like we've taken all this time off? Like, hey guys, sorry about pressing pause for a second there.
We were gone for what, 5 months?
5 months. Josh, we're in a brand new studio.
Yeah, we are.
Right now we're back to camera.
Yep, we are back to a camera. We're moving to a 3-cam here soon.
3-cam.
Just be anticipating that. Today's only a 1-cam. But,
right now we only have our one friend Cam.
We only have one
named
friend
Cam.
named Cam.
Yeah.
You will be getting these episodes in a couple months though. So you're going to hear camp. It's during camp.
That's right.
But you're not going to get these episodes until the fall.
That's right, because we're going to stock up.
We're stocking up again.
We're
We did at the beginning. And then
we did. Can I be honest with you, Josh? It made me feel so much better if for some reason something came up and we weren't able to.
Well, and that's kind of what happened
episode.
with this is our schedules just kind of got to a point where it was
and you had a couple
chaotic.
big projects dropped in your lap.
Yeah, my son Nico.
That
was in December.
Yeah, but maybe a little more importantly.
Yeah, well, I'm in the studio. So if you guys can't see, I actually, this used to be an office. I cut it in half. We built a wall with some volunteers. Shout out to my dad as well, who came down from Pennsylvania, helped me out a little bit. And then we built this set for some new training content, which you guys will be hearing in some ad reads here in the future.
That's right.
Some exciting stuff. Stacking Chairs is the same, but a little different. It looks a little nicer. Sounds the same.
Here's all we did. We bought new chairs.
We're in the same chairs.
Wow. What?
We're in the same chairs we were before. Although if you look in the background.
I'm taking another break.
Did you see what's on the bookshelf? Guys, watch. You can see little stacked.
Scripture journal?
No, the chairs. You see all the little chairs? There's little chairs on the shelf there.
Wow.
Yeah. So come check out the new studio or the new set on YouTube. Expect to hear camp happening in the background. And Kyle, we should probably introduce our guest.
Hey, so this is my good friend Josh Paulhamus.
Hi,
ladies and gentlemen. If you have watched or listened to the episodes before, you probably have heard this delicate Dominican demeanor come across your earwaves. Okay,
I don't know if Eric's delicate.
Yeah, never being called that, but I'll take it.
We'll take it.
Well,
Yeah, I'll take
demonstrative Dominican. This is Eric Gill, ladies and gentlemen. Eric, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Que lo que, que lo
Que
que,
lo que.
que lo que.
He's halfway through the week, so he's like doing like okay. He's
like-
kind of like zoned in. He's
At the end of it, he's going to be like back to that on fire guy. But right now he's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
how much I
you
can do.
caught me in the part of the day where it's like transition. It's like you're recharging for the next day.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I definitely.
Yeah,
feel that.
I'm excited
I'm
you're
glad-
here. Eric,
I'm glad to be
you
here.
were one of our close to the beginning of the episodes, and we talked about marketing, right?
You did.
A long time ago.
Second of all, we talked about. Come on,
Do you remember?
come on. Do I remember?
I don't think you do. I don't think you know.
What are you talking about?
You don't know what the episode is. You're trying to
I
get
have
out
no
of it.
idea.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I don't remember.
That's
Wow.
so funny. I saw it.
All
I
I
was like,
know is that I figured after the first time, I figured out which kind of shares we have of my youth ministry.
yes,
Really?
we did talk
Yeah.
about that in
we
his
did talk
episode.
about that.
Oh, that's right.
We used to share stories at the beginning. You remember that?
We used to talk
Yeah.
about,
Things have changed.
and then at the end we used to talk about stacking chairs. Like we
I
used
know.
to ask people all the time.
How many chairs have you stacked in your life?
In honor of stories, though, I told you guys this story earlier. That I was at a gig today with camp, and this little kid walked up to me and
Oh,
said,
this
like,
is sad.
and she goes, like, you're just talking. You know how kids are. They just all of a sudden say something. They're like, yeah, my aunt died, and I was like, oh. I'm so sorry. That's awful. And then the next girl, a little beside her, goes, "Yeah, my aunt died too." And I was like, "Oh wow, guys, I'm so sorry." I'm like, maybe they're related. Third girl goes, "My aunt died," and I was like, "Guys, are we talking about bugs right now?" And they're like, "Yeah, we were collecting bugs yesterday. All of our ants died."
Wow.
So there's a story. There's a youth story.
I love it. And those were young youth, there's
No,
probably more.
these are like 7-year-olds.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
like
not really
so
like
younger.
It's kids.
Younger.
Which I said, whether in your youth group or youth camp or, well, I mean, insert children's ministry.
Yeah,
You
yeah. Listen. Youth are. I even talked to
Youth
people
is-
that are old that still act and carry themselves like youth.
How you feel like you're part of the youth,
I am.
and even though you're how old?
I am 22 years old.
There's- there you
it's
go.
that meme. Hello, fellow youth. You seen that one with the guy with the backwards hat? It's
Yes.
yeah, with
Yes.
the skateboard.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what that is.
Hey, so today it's a joy to have Eric back. Like we said, Eric is our speaker at the Coast. By the time you probably get to listen to these episodes, the Coast will be winding down and finishing or
Yeah,
done.
probably done.
And so I will say we just finished 8 incredible weeks of youth
so.
camp. So lives reach and change for eternity. You got to see young people take their next step with Jesus
Yeah.
because that's what we're all about at
Yeah.
youth camp. And so it's
Amen.
awesome. And we are already, Scott, we are already,
Yeah.
Josh, gearing up.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, we're gearing up to for winter camp.
Yes.
So
Well,
very-
at
very,
the
very
time
excited.
you're listening
No,
to
no,
this.
we already are
you
gearing
are?
up. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we've
Look
already
at
started
you.
to build
Look at
plans.
that initiative.
Trying, man.
Yeah.
Trying. So
When winter camp has kind of grown quite a bit in the past few years. Now that you guys are doing Intersect.
yeah.
And you guys, I mean, we talked about Intersect before.
Well, I don't know if we have because this is barely. I mean, we
No, 'cause we had,
should have.
We had that one guy write in who had gone to Intersect in Ohio.
Okay, that's right. So Intersect is our remote camp locations where we do not have a head base of operations. So right now we are in California, Cold Springs, California. We are in Miamisburg, Ohio, and now we are in New Hampshire, Josh.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, opening up
Wow.
a very first one weekend
Yeah.
up in New Hampshire with
Yeah.
Camp Monadnock, and
Wow.
really
Spell
excited. Monadnock.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Just like I thought.
Eric, remind the viewers, where are you from? What do you do? Which kind of gives your whole credentials as to why you're here.
Yeah, so I currently live in Akron, Ohio, and serving in the role of the young adult pastor at a church called Maranatha Bible Church. Been there now at the time of this video coming out, a little bit over 6 years.
I was going to say, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
You're out there with Steve, right?
Yeah, there's a few Word of Life alumni. I'm on the staff. I
It's
started
basically
as
where
a-
Word of Life goes after they leave Word of Life. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, if they want something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we started as a middle school pastor,
want
high
something
school
else.
pastor, and now in this role.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been
That's
fun.
awesome. And you have 2 beautiful young children.
2 beautiful young children, one on the way.
One on the
Yeah.
way.
One on the way.
And they're old enough now where they're getting personalities. They're being
Yes.
rebellious.
Yeah,
finally.
they're wild.
absolutely.
They're fun, and we love them.
Listen, I
Yeah.
sat next to the older one today at lunch, and every once in a while she would just kind of look over at me and she'd ask a question.
Yeah.
And then she would go back to eating her lunch, and then she'd look back over and she would kind of give me this like very kind but very menacing side eye. Did she get that from you or from your wife?
Depending on the day for both of us.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
that was the diplomatic
Yeah.
answer.
That
He
was-
didn't, he
that
didn't just
was.
say Jenny.
Yeah. And also a bolt of lightning did not pierce through
I
the.
felt
yeah.
nervous. Jenny comes out of the ceiling and attacks him.
You
So,
get knocking.
Eric, you have been in youth ministry for many a year now. I'm sure you've seen some great high moments. I'm sure you've seen some low, dark moments. I'm sure you've had tears that have wept, blood you have shed, sleepless nights, all those different things. But today we're talking about a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever tell a kid you're not invited back? I honestly, so now in this role, and I was, while you guys were talking, I'm still currently now, at least at the time of the recording. I am the middle school youth pastor at a church. Josh, you're a youth leader at your church. Eric, you've been through this where you've had to look at a kid and say, I'm sorry, bud. Like, and we're not just talking about like, hey, I need you to leave tonight. You need to take a pause. Like, hey, how did you do that?
Well,
Yeah.
you guys have had to do that then?
Yeah, and it's a great question, but it's a very difficult question to answer because there's different ways that you can approach it. And I guess the simple way to say it is you have to look at the student and consider who it is. So first of all, you have to identify, is this a student that is a recurrent visitor or is it a first-time visitor? Because however you answer that, you will deal with them differently. For us, if you're a recurring visitor, we're gonna deal with you not harsher, but we're gonna be more direct and we're gonna expect more from you.
Yeah.
If you're a first-time visitor, we still want you to be part of this, but we will show also more grace because you're coming in. Right. You may not know the rules, you may not know how we do things, you may not have respect for the Word of God, and so on and on. And so you'd show more grace, but then eventually you do get to the point where you're like, all right, something needs to change because this is not working.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's press pause. Can I be because all three of us have spoken. Okay. How do you deal with that unruly, disruptive kid while you're speaking?
Yeah.
What do you do?
So it's a matter of like in your ability to preach, you have to read the room.
Okay.
And if you're noticing the student, like let's say they're sitting in the front and you're preaching, one of the things that I like to do is that I start to, first of all, I will look at them and just make eye contact. And I will stare at them while preaching, but I'll stare at them to get their attention. If that doesn't work, then I'll move towards them. I will stand like very close to them or even right in front of them to get them to see, hey, I see you. I see that you're talking and you're distracting. And then if it continues, then it will be to the point where I acknowledge it. Hey, look, like stop doing this. Yeah. Or sometimes like it just happens, like I'm teaching and I'm driving into an illustration, and the illustration that I use is the student doing the exact same thing. So this one time I'm teaching about like being disregarding the gospel. Yeah. And as I'm talking about being disregarding the gospel, there's a kid playing with a water bottle with the kid in front of him and hitting him in the head. Yeah. And so I said, disregarding the teachings of the gospel is like a kid grabbing a water bottle and hitting the person in front of him with a bottle. And I'm staring at him while I'm saying this. And so
did he catch on?
He catch on at that point.
Wow. Kudos to him for picking up.
Yeah. But then if they don't, and if it doesn't work, then just flat out say their name. Say, hey, look, you're distracting and this is important, and then just use that as a teaching opportunity.
Have you ever had to do anything like that?
I mean, as a youth leader, you're always sitting in the crowd, and half your job is to sit there and listen. The other half is to look for the person who's distracting somebody else.
Okay, so hold on. Let me ask a side question then, because one thing that I deal with the leaders at my ministry, at the ministry I get to work at, is I've started to say, hey, I don't need you to be policemen and women in the back of the room.
Oh, okay.
I want you to sit with the kids. Now, be smart about where you sit with them. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But how do you make sure I'm actually paying attention to the message? So, like for instance, the other day Eric was preaching his very first day. He was preaching, and man, this one kid was sitting right behind me. He would not. Did you notice that kid?
No.
He would not shut up. He would not. In Jesus' name, bless God, amen. I'm so sorry if I offended anybody. But like he would not stop talking.
Yeah.
And so the counselor next to him was like, hey. And so finally turned around and said, hey, bud, I'm so sorry. You are distracting me. I need you to stop. I said, I'm so sorry, bud.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
So like, I get there, but sometimes I have some leaders, and I've been there, right? Some lead that like they spend the whole time looking around, and they'll come over, and I'm like, that's more distracting to me.
Yeah.
If you're constantly trying to like nitpick and you're looking for someone to fail, I mean, it's like just in any way. Like if you have a youth leader who's always looking for the kids that do something wrong, those kids are going to feel like they're being policed by that person instead of being like.
Well, and then sometimes I go back to the Andy Stanley line: "What is rewarded is repeated." Sometimes when you do that, your reaction is a reward. I got him. I got him.
True.
You know.
Yeah. I told that story on Stacking Chairs before, where a kid was like, he was like bragging about how he had made me laugh during small group. And that's almost like a badge of honor, which
it's what it is.
It takes a lot to get you to laugh.
Yeah.
I just did it.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's a fine line too, because like to your point, you don't want to police it.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to distract the message. And so how do you deal with that? It's a very unique situation that, it's case by case.
Sure.
And you have to use discernment. You definitely have to use it.
Cool.
Well, so let's talk about a little bit. I mean, obviously we're talking about the early stage of like, okay, you have a kid who's disruptive, you have a kid who's doing something. Ultimately, we're talking about, okay, this kid, we are going to ask him to leave potentially. I think let's take the easy one first, which is camp.
Okay.
Camp is, you guys have to kick kids out, and it's probably,
unfortunately,
it's not easy to kick them out. It probably happens way more often than in a youth group setting.
Okay, you ready for this one?
Okay.
Opening day.
Opening day of
camp.
Okay. Oh no.
Very first registration.
You're not talking about this week, are you?
A mom comes to me and says, I'm dropping off my two sons. This one is going to try to get kicked out.
No way.
He's already told me he's going to do everything he can to get kicked out. So I've already talked to his counselors.
Yeah.
And I've already talked to we've already dealt with several problems.
Sure. He's trying to get kicked out.
We tried something brand new. where there were these two brothers. One brother, awesome. The other brother was like, Kyle, I'm so sorry. That, and then the other side of it, there were other boys, and so we actually called the other boys' parents, and we moved them out of the cabin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we moved them out of the cabin.
Interesting.
And
that helped?
It has helped a little.
Well, I mean, because they're still in the middle of that.
He's not as vocally like out. And here's you always are like, you're just praying. Okay, we're preaching the word of God. We're investing into their hearts. We're investing in their lives. You're waiting for that breaking moment of that kid to say, wow, why do you keep loving me?
Yeah.
Because, man, we're trying to show you Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of one of those things where you're just waiting. But, yeah, we typically operate on a 3-strike process.
Okay.
There are times we have to jump to strike 2. There are times we have to jump all the way to strike 3. So technically, in some ways, it's kind of like a 4-strike process, really, which, but it's like, hey, I need you to understand you can't do that. I've already talked to you about this. So sometimes it's like hey guys, we're not going to use that language. Why? Because there are some kids that come in from the outside, and it's okay for them in their group. Mm-hmm. For instance, when I said shut up, okay? I know that there are people that are listening and watching that probably go, whoa, Kyle, whoa.
That's a little strong.
Just a little strong.
Yeah.
Because I have families that are like, we don't say that.
Yeah.
We don't say that. Now we can have a big old conversation of should we and all those different things.
We say hush up.
Hush, cierra la boca. Cierra la boca.
That's what's said in my household.
But there are definitely some things that happen outside that here we're like, we don't. So I think you got to begin with that of like a warning. You shouldn't be like, okay, you looked at me wrong. That's strike 1.
Yeah.
And the kid's like, what are you talking about? I just, I tell my counselors all the time. I'm like, hey, you doing okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Oh, this is just my face. I'm like, well, you can still tell your face that Jesus loves you. Okay. But so I have that conversation because not everybody's going to walk in with the same community ideas that we do. But then, there are hey, you did this. You cannot do that again. Hey, I need you to understand. I've talked to you about this. This is strike 1, or this might be strike 2, depending on what it is. Yeah. Obviously, we try to meet them where they are with the, I hate to say offense, but with the offense. Yeah. But there are some times we need to remove kids. Mm-hmm. Even one of my sons. I remember one time.
I've heard this story.
They called me up on the phone, or they called me on the radio, and I was like, no, you need to call this kid's dad. You need to call this kid's dad. And so they were like, really, Kyle? I said, yeah, you need to call this kid's dad. And so they called me on the phone, and I said, not my kid. What are you doing, Eric? What are you doing there?
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
That's so funny.
Well, the crazy thing was then, like 3-4 weeks later, I'm walking out of campfire. Yeah. And I see this mom just doing the slow drive out of camp. I knew what she was doing. It was actually grandma. She was driving out of camp, and she had a camper with her. And I could tell she was upset, and she was kind of looking around, and I'm going, she wants to talk to me. I didn't know if she knew who I was. And I said, hey ma'am, can I help you? She said, well, I just want you to know, I'm not really sure about this place, blah, 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 blah. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I said, my name's Kyle Graham. I'm the camp director. She goes, oh, I was looking for you. That's my bad. I'm like, oh, you, okay. Well, number one, you didn't know who I was, but
you found me.
It's like you ever heard the guy who called once and he goes, I don't know if you know who you're talking to. I'm good friends with Don Lowe. Which, if you don't know, our CEO is Don Locke. Yeah. And so he just had seen the name written, so assumed I'm good friends with Don Lowe. Like, okay.
And so she explained to me how something happened, and she didn't think it was fair that her grandson, I think it was was his caretaker, so it was her son, but she was the guardian, but was getting kicked out of camp. Mm-hmm. And I looked her square in the face and I said, ma'am, I get it. Can I be honest with you? We have rules, and it's hard, and sometimes we have to even my kid got kicked out of camp. You
told her that?
Yeah. And she said, you kicked your own kid out of camp? I said, I did not, but my leadership who asked the kids to follow the rules, my son broke the rule. He got kicked out of camp. And she said, oh, okay. Yeah. And she drove off property.
I have always thought really highly of you because of that. I think it takes a ton of character to hold the same standard across the board.
So, thanks, man.
Yeah, I think very highly.
That's the nicest thing I've ever seen you
say. All right. Hey, guys. Well, this has been Stacking Chairs.
So thanks so much. We've had a goal to have Josh say something nice, and it's done.
And we got him to laugh again. That's awesome.
Yeah. Hey there, youth leaders. Let's get real for a second. Do you ever feel overwhelmed juggling lesson planning, organizing events, and actually trying to connect with your students? It's like there's never enough time in the day, right? Well, what if you could reclaim some of that time and focus on what really matters? Word of Life Youth Ministries understands the struggle, and they've got something just for you,
a free youth group series designed to save you time and help you build deeper relationships with your students. Each lesson comes fully equipped with detailed teaching notes, small group guides, and engaging discussion starters. No more scrambling to put together content last minute. But that's not all. They've included a Parent Connect feature to keep parents in the loop about what their kids are learning each week. Plus, everything integrates seamlessly with the Multiply app, where you can track your students' spiritual growth and even reward their hard work. Imagine walking into your next youth meeting feeling prepared and stress-free, with more time to actually engage with your students. Picture the impact you could make when you're not bogged down by planning and admin tasks. So visit the link in the show notes and download your free youth group series today. Let's get back to what really matters: connecting with your students and making a lasting impact.
All right, so that's youth camp.
Yeah,
sure.
I've been at places where here's where it gets harder. Okay, I've been at places and even at camp where we've had to call parents and they've had to drive hours.
Oh, that's tough.
And it is.
Yeah, because you get to we bought a car once and the guy was selling it to us and somebody pulled up as he's selling it. And I was like, hey, I need you to knock $500 off the price. So I'm thinking, hey, someone else just pulled up. He's going to use that against me and everything. And he's like, because my wife spoke Spanish, she spoke Spanish, which gave us an in. And he's like, all right, para ti. Like for you? Yeah, okay. So he gives us this deal. These people are driven from Ocala. So they've driven like 2 hours and he just like sent them away. Like he's like, hey, sorry, I already sold the car like just right now, and made them turn around and leave. So I'm sure they felt, however, you're about to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Driving hours.
Well, but I'm
be
thinking
turned
about
around and sent back.
But I'm thinking about the kid that has
waiting.
to step out of camp and wait
Yeah,
for
that's
his
such a
parents,
terrible feeling.
for his
Just feel
parents,
gutted.
you know. And it is, and because you want to minister to these kids, you want to love on these kids, you want to show them the love and the grace. And all of us have been there where you're like, should I let it slide one more time? And here's my thing: when you begin to ruin, not just hinder, when you begin to ruin the experience of another person at this thing, or hurt, you know, because I think there's a little bit of like a hindering. Hey, you know what? This is just frustrating. It's annoying. Guys, I get it. That's annoying. You know, no, I'm not talking about hindering. I'm talking about you are ruining or hurting somebody else or their experience. No.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's different elements of grace that, you know, that we often think that grace is just letting, you know, forgiving and letting things go. There's other elements. The most gracious things for us to do is to actually show like the consequences of your actions, or to deal with the consequences of your actions. And when you look at the Bible, you have two different instances. You have the instance where Jesus tell his disciples, like, don't throw the pearls to the swine.
Yeah.
Now that's a very vivid picture.
Yeah.
Like, don't throw the valuable things to a pig, because the pig is not going to appreciate it. Now, it's not that we're calling those kids a pig, but the picture is like, if you're constantly preaching something as precious and as important as the gospel, right? That it holds the power for salvation, and they're constantly not appreciating, and they're constantly rejecting it, and they're constantly not welcoming, then the responsibility on our end to continue to preach it and to continue to share it, now it's not there. Right. Like, we can move on. It's like the other instance where Jesus told his disciple, hey, if they don't welcome you, then shake the dust off your feet.
Right.
Like, continue moving on and continue to preach the gospel. Now, that does not mean that you don't share the gospel with the kid and that you don't continue to follow up with the kid. But sometimes the most gracious thing to do to a kid like that, and to say, hey, you know what? This is not working. You're not valuing this. And unless you realize how important this is, you're not going to come here and be welcome here. Not because we don't love you and we don't care for you. It's because we also care and love for these other kids that now you're hindering their understanding. Yeah. And you have to be able to do that. And so, and the other flip side of this is like, you think of it as like church discipline. You're in a way disciplining them with the hope that you one day could restore them.
Well, I literally today, we had a situation. We had a person that stepped out of our Camp Crew program, and for those of you that don't know, Camp Crew is a program for 14 to 18-year-olds to come and work camp, to be a part of camp, and they're here all summer. We have a discipleship program, and it was just one of those things. I think this was the first time that this student was stepping out of the house, and so it was very overwhelming for them. But I went over and I shook the parent's hand. I shook the student's hand, and I said, hey, I just want you to know you're always welcome here. Because I always want, and so whether it's a they're choosing to step out or it's a dismissal I still think the right thing to do is to meet that kid with hope. And I agree with you. Even if it's a hard, you got to go, because let's be honest. How many times the problem is sometimes these are the kids they've never been told no before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
They've never been told
Yeah.
they can't do that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that they don't. They. It's like as a way of like expressing themselves or dealing with their own pains, their own struggles from the situation at home. They come to this new place and they're trying to take it on other people because they want to, deal. That's how they deal with their pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the thing that's hard is when you have a visitor that you know that he's there for the first time and you know that he desperately needs the gospel. How do you get to the point where you tell that kid, leave? We don't want you to hear this message. Which you never say that.
Yeah.
It can be seen that way.
Oh, for sure. Well, it is such a hard. I mean, I think the most important thing to take away from all this is that you need to bathe all this in a ton of prayer and good counsel, especially when it's a youth group member. And I mean, camp's one thing. Like, camp is kind of more of, they're here for a week and say, we have rules, you have to leave.
Yep.
We had a kid, and I'll stay very vague on this whole thing. We never had to kick the kid out. He ended up, his dad ended up having him not come back because he was a constant distraction. And I remember looking at our youth pastor and I said, can I ask you like a difficult question for us? And he's like, sure. And I was like, okay. Is our goal to reach a bunch of kids with a general message of the gospel and hope that they kind of grow? Or do we want to intentionally disciple those who want to be here? And I said, honestly, I don't think there's a problem with either of those methods. I know churches who do the first method. I say our church kind of leans toward the second method in general for our general congregation, as well as like we're more bent on helping the believer, the brethren. And so I asked him that question. He's like, well, the latter. And I was like, we might have to ask this kid to stop coming because he's been a constant issue. We've had kids leave the youth group because of some of the stuff that's been going on. And then, by the grace of God, I guess, truly, like he ended up not coming back. And so that was something we had to kind of walk through. But I think that's a good question too, is asking yourself, okay, what kind of youth group do we want to have? And we had that conversation with that kid. I can't tell you how many times. And it just didn't matter. You know what I mean?
So I got a couple questions. All right. So question number 1, when you ask a kid to leave youth group, do you call the parents?
Yes.
Always?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they have to be.
I agree with you. I'm just asking, like, do you call the parents? Do you tell the parents what happened, or do you just say, hey, something's going on with your son right
Well, I
now?
have to imagine it's a conversation, right? Did you guys sit down with the
Yeah,
parents?
it would have to be a conversation.
Because you've done it.
Yeah, and it would have to be a conversation where you have to just say, hey, here's what went down, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
And usually if this is a kid that you gotta keep in mind, if this is a kid in your youth group, chances are you already have had some level of conversation with their parents. Because unless it's something terrible that just happened, you already had told their parents, hey, I'm struggling with your son, or hey, I need you to do this with your kid. And then you get to the point where you're like, you know what? Your son needs to take a break here. Otherwise, you wait, right? But if you get to the point, you have to sit down and you have to walk them through. If it's something big, you want to tell them right away and be explicit. If it's not something big, usually I just give them like a general idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Do you give the kid a warning? Hey, you're pushing us to the spot where we might have to ask you to not come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the ways that I do is, like I said, is or at least back when I was in that role, is that I would get have a conversation with him the first time on one-on-one.
Yeah.
Okay.
After the message or after the discussion. Then if it happened again, I would do the same thing. And it will go a couple times where I will have that conversation. Hey, you need to stop.
Yeah.
And then if he continued to do it in the service, I will call him out in the service. And then when he got to the point where now other kids were being more affected by it, then I will kick him out and say, hey, you're not coming back for the next 5 months or for the next week or the next 5 months or whatever. And then if it was like, all right, you're not welcome here, then at that point, the kid would know because I would have already had a conversation.
Have you ever had to go that far?
No. Okay. But I have had to go to the point where it's like, okay, you need to leave today. You can be part of this.
Okay, so you've only done temporary kicked out.
Well, I've done temporary, and I've done where I took to the mom.
Yeah.
Unless this change on him,
He's
sorry,
not coming back.
but he can come back.
So the third question you kind of answered, which is you tell them, hey, it's for a week, for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You said for 5 months.
Yeah, you have to give them like a very like a reasonable time of reassessment.
What's the longest?
For me, I can think of the one kid was a whole grade. He was a sixth grader.
Whole grade.
Now, was that a lack of maturity?
Yeah, it was a lack of maturity and a
Yeah.
lack of like being ready to be in the youth group. So I just said to the mom, we're excited for him to be part of the youth group. He's a sixth grader.
Yeah.
I think it will be good for him actually to try again when he's a seventh grader.
Yeah.
It's not working out for him, and I think that it will be good for him to just wait a year.
We've had that happen at our youth group. We had a kid who I think was in 5th grade, and his parents actually made the decision like, we don't think he's mature enough to be in youth group yet.
See, that's so tough.
Yeah.
I think, I actually think the second one is harder, but I think the two incredibly interesting, can be potentially difficult transition times are children's ministry into middle school ministry.
Yeah.
Which is a topic of conversation for another day. Do you split your middle school and high school? I actually think the easier one is transitioning between middle school and high school out of these three.
Yeah.
But I think the first harder one is the transition from children's ministry into middle school ministry. But I think actually the harder one is transitioning from high school ministry into college ministry because how many of those kids are like, man, I want to stay coming back to youth group. And you're like,
There's not.
you need to move on.
Yeah.
Well, can I be a leader? I've got a situation.
We talked about that.
I've got a situation where I've got somebody that wants to come back to youth camp, and I'm like, no, you've graduated. You graduated a couple of years ago. No, it's not going to work. And it kills me. It's so hard because they're like, man, I feel like this, and I said, come back. As a
And like you said,
as a
a conversation for another day. But part of that too is because churches don't have anything for them.
It's difficult though too. Like we're dealing with that right now. So I've been praying about this. We've talked about it on the show before. We have one guy in our church who's that age, and him and his girlfriend. They're like, we're trying to find a place that's college and career based, and I'm like, there's nobody else your age. I don't even know. Like, so he's been coming to my house. I've been discipling him, and so we have that one-on-one relationship. But he's looking for a group. He wants to be able to get put in, build friendships that are his age, and I'm like, I don't even know what to offer you because you're already coming to my house. Who else am I going to invite? Like. That's where we struggle. I think a lot of churches do is because the kids who go to college, they leave.
Yeah.
And then the ones who are in career, they come back. They're maybe 22, 23. And if they come back, I mean, I didn't go back home after I graduated college. Did you?
No.
Yeah. I mean, well, you didn't go back to the DR.
Yeah.
And like I stayed in New York and
You're
then
from the DR?
Yeah. Born and raised.
And but then I came to Florida and like I haven't lived in Pennsylvania for 11 years?
But so you just brought up an interesting point that reminded me. I remember it was probably 3 years into my marriage.
Sure.
And my wife pulled me aside one time when we went back home, stayed at my house that I grew up in. And she said, I don't know if you ever realize this. Do you realize you revert back to basically being like a teenager and your parents revert back to you being a teenager? Like they talk to you. Like she was like, it's weird. When they come to visit us, it's different. When we meet up with them in different place, it's different. But it's like she's like, it's typically like day 2 or day 3. She's like, I just noticed you just kind of settle in and they say, and you know what? How is that not the same exact thing for kids that graduate high school ministry? Not because again, they're coming back to your children's are in a completely, most of the time, different room. Different makeup, different all these different things. Whereas college ministry, you come back to the youth group. It's like those people that walk, which we've all done it. You all go back and you walk through your high school.
I intentionally didn't just to prove a point. Yes, because I was tired of people coming in. I was like, I don't know who you are, and I don't.
So
care.
I didn't.
You know what I mean?
I went back and I visited. I had a teacher that told me it was an old math teacher that I used to. Once I learned how to do long division the long way.
By 12th grade?
Yeah, you know what? Well, about 2 years afterwards. It was like algebra 3 or whatever. But there's like the long way to do it, and then they go, okay, after we taught you, we're going to show you the really shortcut way. I was like, no, I'm just gonna
long division. You're just talking about the
no, not long division, but like whatever. There was a shortcut in algebraic code, whatever.
Code?
Yes. I was
why
coding
we're in ministry.
11001110001.
Now here's the short way.
So my teacher used to always say, you need to come back and you need to sing Frank Sinatra, I Did It My Way. And so I came back. I showed up one year. It was like 3 years after graduating, and I came and I knocked on her door because she would always be like, "Are you back here to sing? You're gonna come back?" Anyways,
that's funny.
I went back to help out actually with a production thing, which was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
It was really neat to do. I forget where we were going with that because again, we're all old.
We got down a rabbit trail. Honestly, we should probably wrap up because I know you had the meeting at 3.
That's okay.
It's 3.
It is 3. We all agree there is a time that you need to correct a kid. We all agree with that. Number 2, there has to be a time where you give a kid a warning.
Yeah.
But there does reach a point where you might have to say, hey, for temporary or for a whole season, it's time to set aside. But I would agree with you. I think you need to, you see a path, you have it there, You have a conversation with the parents. Let me ask you a side question. Did you have conversations with the parents as you were moving towards that spot of asking them?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How did that go?
You got to remember, as youth pastor, our role is not to be the student's primary discipleship person. We're there to assist the parents. And so if that's truly the case, then we have to, at every lane we take, everything that we do, the parents have to be involved with that. Yeah. They have to be in the know, and especially when it comes to dealing with hard things, because they're the ones that are going to take their kids back home for a whole week, and then you're going to get them again the following week. So you need them, even for your own success, you need the parents to be in the know and to be intentional.
Okay, follow-up question. Have you dealt with a parent that was angry whenever you kick the kid out?
No, and like keep in mind, I haven't done this that many of times, but I have.
It's just like it's like bang, bang.
Yeah,
bang.
it's not like we.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing? You know what? That was a horrible high five. Get out.
Get out of here.
One kid just says "riz" and he's like, I hate that word. Kicks him out.
No, but
riz right out the door.
No, but it's what was the question again?
Have you ever had a parent? Have you ever had a parent that was angry with you, and was that your pastor?
Yeah, no, pastor. No, it was.
Let's be honest. There's sometimes the pastor.
Sometimes.
I can say that as the pastor's kid who got problems.
Yeah, it's not
in youth group.
It's not that they
problems.
It's not that they get angry, but they get shocked sometimes. Because I mean, it's easy as parents. We can get to a point where we think that our kids are perfect more than they are. Mm-hmm. I actually had a tough conversation a couple of weeks ago. By the time we recorded this, where we were having our baptism at a church, and I had to meet with a family with a student, and they were convinced that their daughter was ready to get baptized. And I'm meeting with them, and I had to tell them, hey, look, listen, it's not my place to judge her salvation, but by everything that I'm hearing and by everything that I'm seeing, it doesn't seem that she fully understands what it is, the decision that she's making. So I think it will be best for her not to get baptized this time around. But to come back again at a different time and give time or take the process to really dig into knowing what it is that baptism is. And that was a very difficult conversation. And I could see it in their parents. Like they were shocked. They were not pleased. They were mad at me. They kind of understood where I was going from, but they were shocked. It kind of bothered them. Like, you mean my daughter is not going to get baptized this Sunday? That we were planning already. We have family and friends coming, and so having that conversation is tough, but it's necessary.
Well, but I think when you can sit down and have a conversation with parents and they can see you are doing this for the betterment of my kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've all hopefully I know you and I have been there in situations where you make a choice. It's the hard choice. And you just kind of lay it out, and you're just kind of sitting there going like, this is not you just got to deal with, here's our call. Yeah. No, this is for the betterment of your kid. Yeah. And when that parent can say, okay, it's a tough call, and they understand for you it was a tough call. It's not that you're against them or against their kid. Yeah. It's a loving.
And part of this is your approach. You have to, first of all, like you have to be biblical. You have to have discernment, and you have to care for the family. And so one practical way to just do this is to show the parents that you know their kids. Hey, here's what I observed by your kids. Yeah. Here are all of the good things that your kids does. Yeah. And here's why I'm excited for him to be part of this youth group. Yeah. Now, the thing is that right now there's this area that he needs to develop in that unless he develops something on it, then it's not going to be for his benefit to be part of this youth group. Yeah. And so you're not talking down on the kid. Yeah. You're exalting the kid while also pointing out, hey, he's not perfect. He's doing good, but he's not perfect. Work on this area so he can continue to grow.
Well, and you made a good point. We have to know the kid. You can't operate off guesswork because this is someone's life. Like you kick a kid out of youth group, like that's a hardy and weighty decision. Absolutely. People, I think too often we underestimate or we get too wrapped up in our own drama that we just kind of forget that there's a person on the other end of that decision. And if you're flippant about it, you're going to affect that person, and you could push them away. And here's the thing, like, we believe that God's in control, but you can push that kid away and give him a really bad taste for church, and that leads to church hurt, which leads to people who might walk away from the faith. Like, we need to be intentional about these kinds of decisions and not flippant with them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so, hey, I got an idea for small group real quick, and then we'll end. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for small group. Small group is a time where we kind of make it a little more practical, a little more real. We may be sharing a funny story or a more serious story or an idea of what you could do. Yeah. And so Josh, here's what we did. I actually got halfway through my. I got halfway through my beginning as the middle school youth pastor.
Yeah.
And I sat down with the guy that was the previous middle school pastor, and I just told him about some of the problems. And he goes, "Oh, you didn't walk him through the rules." I said, "What are you talking about? We didn't walk him through." He goes, I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you. He goes, every fall and every January, I had like 5 or 6 rules. He said, and I would walk him through it. And he said, and then every Wednesday for like the next 3 Wednesdays, we would review them. He said, so the first time I took about 5-10 minutes and walked through them and kind of explained. And I was like, well, what about the kid that showed up? He goes, but when the bulk of your kids understand this is the rule, he said, they actually start to help you with the other kids. And so he walked through we worship together. Yeah. Which means we don't distract one another. We actually sing. If you don't want to participate, we're not going to force you to sing, but you don't distract. Yeah. You can make it through the word. You go when you can, not when you have to. If you can make it through a Marvel movie, you can make it through my preaching. You don't have to leave.
I can make it through a Marvel movie.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about middle schoolers. But he walked through these different things. And so honestly, as we were sitting here talking, I thought, how many times do we have expectations that we don't give to these kids? Oh. And then sometimes it blindsides them because they're sitting there going, wait. I didn't even know I was doing something. And a lot of times, let's be honest, a lot of times we give amazing amount of grace, but we actually don't give grace because we never tell the person. Yeah. See, grace is, hey, I need you. We don't do that here. Yeah. I need you to not do that. Oh, okay, great. You're not. Yeah. Hey, no, like today, I had a kid. Something happened on our team, on our one of our work area teams. It didn't work the way that I was hoping to. So I got him on the radio and I said, "Hey, just so you're not in trouble, but here's how I." Okay. He goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Gray." I said, "Here's the deal. Forgiven. I appreciate that." I said, "But you don't need to say sorry like you did something wrong. You didn't know what you were doing, but that's still grace. You lay out that guideline for that."
You've heard common sense isn't common. Yeah. Well, I actually saw a report the other day that the generations as we continue on into Gen Z and now Gen Alpha, who is now 12 and 13 years old.
Yep. They just entered your youth
or 14 group. Maybe. Yeah. So they're Gen Alpha is coming to your youth group, and we are dealing with more and more contextual illiteracy. So that was the coined term that they used, but the idea is that they can't understand context. They don't pick up on clues, like
social cues and stuff. Yeah.
They just don't pick up on it. So they just operate. Which is why when you'll watch a video from someone in Gen Z or Gen Alpha, they'll start off a video when they're doing like a TikTok or whatever. They'll say, "Oh, this is for," and this, this isn't for this person, or this is for this person. They give the context before they explain something because they anticipate that you're going to assume it's for yourself.
Right.
Which if someone's saying like, "Hey, I'm, blah, blah, blah," and they're doing some story and they're explaining something for something that I know is specifically for this group of people, I can build context and I know who they're talking to. This generation can't. Well, and so that applies to even rules. They're like, well, why would I assume that I can't do this?
That also reminds me of, there's a lot of times I'm watching my college students and slightly older that I need to let them know, hey, this is not a suggestion. This is what I'm asking you to do. Yeah. And when I'm saying, hey, could you please do this for me? It's well, I mean, I could, but I don't. And I'm like, no. I want you to do this for me.
They lack contextual, like their literacy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There's a whole report on it. It's each generation has their own struggles and things that they deal or not know how to deal with. And so this is one that we have to be aware of as youth leaders.
I think this is why we need to make sure we are continuing to be students of culture. We're students of, and guess what? We could all sit here and go, oh my goodness, that's how dare they? They need to get on our page. That's not a loving, gracious, kind answer.
That's where they are and help them.
Which I mean, I love this about Jesus. It says he knows his sheep. His sheep.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. He knows his sheep.
There you go.
Sheep.
He knows them. Yeah. And so like, if he does that, why couldn't we?
Absolutely.
God has entrusted in us, this generation and the next generation to minister to them. We got to know them. We got to know how they behave.
We're not giving them excuses to be illiterate in this. Like we have to help.
Absolutely. Well, and if it's a faithful man teaching a faithful man teaching a faithful man, you've got to understand that you're handing it into the context that. Now, I'm not talking about reworking the truth. I'm not talking about reinterpreting the truth. I'm just saying making sure they understand it in the context of in the same exact way. When you show up to a different nation and you're sharing the same gospel. But you got, oh, okay, all right. If I do this, if I,
in a way, you do what Paul says of becoming all things,
all the
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And that's really what it is. It's like you don't change the truth. The
Well,
truth remains the same.
Yeah.
It's how you carry it.
What a
about.
beautiful example of Peter and Paul's gospel, where Peter in Acts chapter 2 and Paul in Acts chapter 17, they both stood up and gave the gospel. They both gave a very clear gospel presentation to the context of those people who had specific understanding foundations. So.
Yeah.
Hey, this is awesome, guys.
Good.
I appreciate it. Josh, what has this been?
Guys, this has been Stacking Chairs. First episode back in 5
Welcome
months.
back.
We did it. Guys, remember, you can always follow us on Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere, on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you feel like. Stacking Chairs Pod at WOL.org. Send us an email. Let us know what's going on. We're working with a new producer, so he'll be able to make sure that you get your questions answered quickly. Yes, Kyle? What's up? Oh, you're waiting to yell? Eric, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciated it. I hope we have a good rest of this week. We're praying for you. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And Kyle, don't forget to
Stack those chairs!